Hang Gliding Flight School is a free educational resource created to share the fun and adventure of flying by encouraging, teaching, and inspiring aviators of all ages. Aviation videos provide a supplement, never a replacement, for face-to-face, in-person training with qualified teachers. Visit www.hangglidingflightschool.com for a map of nearly 40 flight instructors in the USA.
Good day, aviators, and welcome to another episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. My name is Eric, and this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School is part of a series of videos about the myths of hang gliding. There are a lot of strange misconceptions about the sport which can discourage people from learning to become hang glider pilots. So, I thought it would be fun to make a few videos which confront some of these negative perceptions, because I believe when aviators remain cheerful and enthusiastic about the future, we can inspire an optimistic outlook, which shall encourage people to embrace hang gliding and help the sport to flourish. So this video will abolish the myth that hang gliding is a dying sport, right? I mean, this is a myth that I really despise because it has truly been born out of colossal ignorance. Look at it this way, okay? Imagine that you're like really excited to throw a party and you invite tons of people over and you tell everyone how fun it's going to be and you're looking forward to everyone having a great time. Then you find out that some of your friends are going around saying the party's going to be totally dead, nobody's going to show up, right? How would that make you feel? You probably wouldn't regard those people as friends anymore, right? They would be traitors to your friendship, subverting your party by discouraging people from attending. Every single pilot who has ever said hang gliding is dying is the same kind of traitor. They're betraying the future of our sport by imploring potential guests to skip the party. They may be fellow pilots, but they are not our friends. Over the years, the popularity of all sports waxes and wanes. And unfortunately, this natural fluctuation in popularity has caused some hang glider pilots to become very cynical and pessimistic. And worst of all, these cynics misguide potential pilots into believing that hang gliding is a dying sport. Preaching such demoralizing rhetoric discourages potential pilots from trying before they even give it a chance. The hang gliding community is foolishly belittling the sport to aspiring pilots, then wondering why there aren't droves of new pilots. I mean, these idiots keep telling everyone that our party sucks and can't figure out why there aren't more people showing up for the party. Hang gliding is genuinely thriving. The party is awesome once you know where to find it. In 1 year, my video on how to become a hang glider pilot has earned over 27,000 views, while my worldwide map of hang gliding schools has earned over 71,000 views. That is almost 200 people a day for an entire year. That alone is evidence for a massive amount of interest in the sport. In truth, the hang gliding community is simply oblivious to the immense popularity of hang gliding. For example, this is why I created the map that I just mentioned, okay? The single most important priority for all prospective pilots is to find a flight school. So when I first created the Hang Gliding Flight School project, I scoured the internet for a consolidated map of worldwide hang gliding flight schools and clubs, and I was astounded to discover such a resource simply didn't exist. Hang gliding organizations in various countries have published maps to show hang gliding resources in their own nation, but no one ever concatenated all those disparate maps into a singular repository. So I spent weeks researching that information to create such a map myself.
For the first time in the history of the sport, hang glider pilots finally have a collective map showcasing over 450 hang gliding schools and clubs around the world.
You're also free to download all that GPS data from the Hang Gliding Flight School website as a text file, and I still keep adding to it. Now, does that look like a dying sport to you? Plus, many of these clubs oversee and maintain at least half a dozen flying sites. There are far more places to fly hang gliders than ride surfboards, but you never hear surfers whine or complain about surfing participation. When I began to promote this definitive map, one hang glider manufacturer told me they had no idea there were so many hang gliding schools in the United States. The United States has around 130 hang gliding flight schools and clubs, and this manufacturer only knew about 3 of them. Okay? Think about that. If you build hang gliders for a living and you think you only have 3 resources for potential customers in the United States, that could be quite disheartening. Discovering your potential customer base is 40 times larger than you thought changes everything. Like I said, hang gliding is not dying. Hang glider pilots just don't know where the party is at. And a party with 130 people, it's a lot different than a party with 3 people. In addition, hangglidingflightschool.com provides links to every manufacturer I could find for all sorts of gear and equipment, from gliders to harnesses to parachutes to variometers. Worldwide, there are nearly 20 manufacturers of hang gliders. Over half a dozen companies make parachutes. Plus, I even provide links to worldwide hang gliding organizations. There are dozens of hang gliding associations all over Europe, and even in Japan, New Zealand, and Guatemala. On the surface, concatenating and publishing all this information in a single, simple-to-find repository may seem trivial, but it's actually vital. This is exactly the kind of aggregate data aspiring pilots need so they can understand the quantity of resources available in sport. Hangglidingflightschool.com was created to gather all this confusing, inaccurate, compartmentalized information into one location to demonstrate just how much is happening in hang gliding all around the globe. Like I said, hang gliding is thriving, but because of their repetitive failure to access data and information, hang glider pilots are oblivious to the immense popularity of hang gliding. Let me give you a few concrete examples of the kind of information the hang gliding community doesn't know. I've met multiple instructors who have never heard of some of the local training hills I've used. Multiple instructors with decades of experience who had no idea there were additional training hills in a 30-mile radius. An experienced pilot on social media told an aspiring Michigan pilot that the closest instructors were in Utah. If you live in Michigan, there are nearly 60 hang gliding schools and clubs closer than Utah. Once again, you have ignorant pilots providing terrible misinformation to aspiring pilots, which discourages aspiring pilots from even trying.
Hang gliding organizations all around the world only promote instructors who are members of their organization. Therefore, they create misleading maps like this one, which only shows 11 hang gliding schools in the USA. Imagine how disappointing this misinformation is to aspiring pilots. And imagine how excited students are after discovering there are actually over 130 schools and clubs in the United States.
I've seen hang gliding clubs located 70 miles apart schedule conflicting events at their airfields on the same day. What? These airfields don't talk to each other? Huh? Nobody bothered to make a phone call? I've spoken to hang gliding parachute manufacturers who never heard of certain brands of hang gliding harness manufacturers. Since hang gliding parachutes attach to hang gliding harnesses, shouldn't all harness and parachute manufacturers know about one another and network and help each other gain new customers? Why aren't the parachute and harness manufacturers in constant contact with each other? I've seen hang gliding school websites where the instructor doesn't reveal his name anywhere on the website. How can you trust someone to teach you something as dangerous as flying if the teacher is too stupid to tell you their name in their advertising? There are multiple hang gliding schools on the internet which do not provide an address. Okay, I've seen this done by schools in the United States, Europe, South America, and Asia. How do instructors expect to enroll students if the students don't know where the school is located? I don't know how a business could possibly be more inept than offering a service to the public, but neglect to inform the public where that service is happening. Okay, it's a hang gliding school. It's not Hogwarts. Your school isn't in the wizarding world. Why is your address a secret? No one comes to your party if you don't tell them how to get there. I once had a pilot starting a new hang gliding club say he wasn't going to make a website because why should a hang gliding club have a website? I told him, my map of schools and clubs contains over 450 hang gliding clubs all around the world, and all those clubs have websites. How do these pilots expect to recruit members into their club if the club can't be found on the internet? Are they going to pass out flyers at swap meets because they still think it's 1974? There is at least one hang gliding group on Facebook designed to promote hang gliding, but membership in that group is private. Think about that policy, promoting hang gliding through social media, which is closed to the general public. I had a guy in Europe ask about UK hang gliding schools. So I sent him a link to my hang gliding flight school map, and he said he couldn't find any schools because the map was for the United States. Oh my gosh. It's a Google map. Google Maps have existed for 20 years. How can there be grown adults out there who don't know how to use the internet? My map shows the entire planet, not just the USA. You have to zoom in on the map and zoom out. You have to scroll around the map. I mean, I can't teach people everything, okay? I have to assume that people have some basic computer knowledge. The internet is the greatest source of information ever created, but if the hang gliding community doesn't know how the internet works, the internet won't teach them anything about the sport. Another English pilot once said that they have a lack of options to train for hang gliding. England has around 40 hang gliding schools and clubs, and they are a country smaller than Michigan. Okay, seriously, check a map. England is around 50,000 square miles, while Michigan is 56,000 square miles. The drive from York to London it's like 200 miles. Okay, that's less than driving from LA to Vegas. England is a tiny little speck of a country with a ton of hang gliding options, but a horrible perception of how fortunate they are. I mean, Europe in general, it's a fantastic place for hang gliding. The German Hang Gliding Association has published an online map containing over 15,000 launch and landing sites across the continent. In fact, Germany is smaller than Montana, and Germany is home to over 100 hang gliding schools and clubs. Websites like Paragliding Earth feature an astonishing number of worldwide flying sites, and websites like Paragliding Map also illustrate thousands of flying sites all around the world. Those are just a few examples to illustrate the astounding ignorance and lack of knowledge within the hang gliding community. Hang glider pilots who proclaim that hang gliding is a dying sport know nothing about hang gliding, okay? Manufacturers don't realize that hundreds of schools and clubs exist. Instructors don't know how many flying sites there are. Pilots on social media give terrible and inaccurate advice about finding instructors. Clubs don't coordinate their events with one another. Harness and parachute manufacturers don't collaborate and share their potential business partnerships. Hang gliding organizations neglect to promote scores of instructors. Schools don't bother to tell students where they're located. Aspiring pilots can't find schools because they don't know how to use an internet map. Pilots create hang gliding clubs, but don't use the internet to tell anyone the club exists. Pilots create private groups on social media to promote hang gliding to the general public. Tiny countries with dozens of flight resources cynically lament their lack of flight schools. Hang gliding is not a dying sport. Hang gliding is alive and well with thousands of pilots, thousands of flying sites, hundreds of schools, hundreds of clubs, dozens of manufacturers of aircraft and harnesses, and new students getting certified every month. In fact, multiple manufacturers are still designing brand new hang glider models, including Avian in the UK and My EZ-2, built here in the USA by Northwing. Once pilots become aware of all the available information out there, they will discover a vast and flourishing hang gliding culture. And if you're still not convinced, let's discuss the fact hang gliding is still a brand new creation. I get so exasperated hearing short-sighted people talk about hang gliding as if the sport has some antiquated history. That's nonsense. Baseball and football were both invented over 180 years ago in 1839. Tennis was invented over 150 years ago in 1873. Basketball was invented over 130 years ago in 1891. Those are very old sports. The athletes who invented those sports have been dead for generations. Commercial hang glider manufacturers didn't exist until 1967. Okay, hang gliding is so new, many of the original innovators are still alive and flying today.
In fact, I have had the honor of flying with Joe Faust, one of the people who founded the United States Hang Gliding Association. And I've also flown with Mr. Frank Culver, who was there at the very first hang gliding meet in California and also invented the very first hang gliding variometer.
If you become a brand new hang glider pilot 5 years from now, in 150 years, history will still regard you as a member of the first generation. When you put that into a historical perspective, it's obvious hang gliding isn't dying. Hang gliding was just born. And newly born industries, they always struggle to become established and gain their footing. In the first decades after filmmaking was invented, there were film studios all around the country, and most of them closed. In the first decades after the automobile was invented, there were car manufacturers all around the world, and most of them closed. In the first decades after the internet was invented, there were endless web design companies, and you guessed it, most of them closed. So you name it, throughout all of human history, businesses jump on the bandwagon of new inventions, and many of those businesses fail. Yes, today there are less hang glider manufacturers than there were in 1975, but there are also a lot less automobile manufacturers than there were in 1925. Now, most hang glider pilots, they're astonishingly oblivious to this commonplace oscillation in all new industries.
Skateboarding is also 50 years old, and it has experienced repeated peaks and valleys of popularity. BMX racing is the same, with the popularity rising and falling over the last 5 decades.
I sincerely regard the drop in hang gliding participation since the early 1990s as a wonderful saving grace. Before then, inept manufacturers sold death trap aircraft, which tragically ended the lives of naive pilots who didn't know any better. Other 70s and 80s pilots were so reckless in their disregard for public safety and private property, they tainted hang gliding with a terrible reputation. Read news articles from that era. Look at the time frame when laws banning hang gliding were enacted. Dangerous pilots polluted our sport so badly, hang gliding became illegal in countless places and almost became illegal everywhere. There is nothing admirable about trailblazing hang gliding if the pioneers were so negligent and irresponsible they nearly destroyed the existence of the sport. The decline of shady companies and the exodus of audacious pilots is a blessing which kept hang gliding alive. Every single person who claims hang gliding is dying is someone who fails to see the wonder of human potential. Don't take their cynicism to heart. Your hang gliding instructor may retire. A new housing project may eliminate your favorite flying site. Who cares? Become an instructor yourself. Scout out new flying sites. Hang gliding is a phoenix, forever reborn from the ashes of our determination. I guarantee, if you walked into all those motion picture studios going bankrupt in the 1930s, the film crews would warn you that the moving industry was a dying fad and the flickers weren't going to be around much longer. Fatalistic people with years of experience in their field don't have any foresight into what tomorrow may bring. So, those of you who are aspiring pilots just entering the world of hang gliding, remember, historically speaking, hang gliding is a brand new sport. I'm incredibly confident about the bright promise of hang gliding, and you should be too, because you are smart enough to recognize the historical relevance of a state-of-the-art and miraculous invention. Bleak misinformation spread by embittered pilots will be overcome because idealistic pilots like you are becoming educated and knowledgeable. Hang gliding is flourishing, and you have the power to bolster a thriving sport with your optimism and enthusiasm for flight. The popularity of hang gliding, it will inevitably ebb and flow, but the sport resonates with an undeniably vibrant future, especially when good-hearted souls like yourself choose to contribute to it. Never trust a hang glider pilot who insists the good old days of the sport are in the past. You can rest assured your good old days are yet to come. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Hang Gliding Flight School. I hope this episode has helped you see things in a new way, successfully dispelled a destructive myth of hang gliding, inspired potential aviators to join the sport, and encouraged existing pilots to evangelize it. Be sure to check the Hang Gliding Flight School website to find a worldwide map of instructors near you who will train you to become a hang glider pilot. And remember, my friends, in the words of Ray Bradbury, you've got to jump off cliffs all the time and build your wings on the way down.